You are exactly where you need to be. Right now, in this moment, there is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to fix or finish or remember or prepare for. Nothing at all. You have found this place, this quiet, this specific, rare quiet at the end of a day when the world outside has finally, mercifully, stopped demanding things from you. And that is enough. Let your eyes close if they haven't already. Let the sounds of the day, whatever they were, wherever you went, whatever was said, whatever remained unsaid, whatever you carried from the morning into the afternoon and then all the way to here, let them begin to soften now. They are behind you. Every single thing that happened today is already in the past, and the past can wait until morning. Tonight, you are going somewhere. But first, take one slow breath in. Breathe in through your nose, slowly filling your lungs from the bottom to the top. Feel your belly expand first, then your rib cage, then your chest. Hold it for just a moment, gently, without strain, and release slowly, all the way out, every last bit of air through your mouth in a long, unhurried exhale. Feel your body soften with the exhale. Take another breath, even slower than the last, in through the nose, long, slow, filling, hold, and out, long and easy and completely unhurried, through the mouth. Good. Now, without any effort, bring your attention to your face. Notice your forehead first. Is it holding any tension? Any faint line or crease from the thinking of the day, from the concentration or the worry or the squinting at screens? With your next exhale, let it smooth. Let it soften completely. Let your brow be as still and clear as the surface of a very deep lake at midnight. No ripple, no reflection, no movement at all. Drop your awareness to your eyes. They are closed now. Let them remain closed. Let the muscles around them release. Let the slight tension that keeps eyes closed relax into a rest that is more like floating than shutting. Your eyes have done their work today. Let them rest in the dark. Notice your jaw. Most people by the end of a day are holding their jaw slightly tight, teeth lightly pressed, muscles slightly engaged. Let it soften. Let your teeth part just slightly. Let the whole lower half of your face go completely soft. There is no expression required here. No face to make for anyone. You can simply let every muscle in your face do absolutely nothing at all, and nothing is the most restful thing. Bring your attention to your throat. Notice if there is any tension there, the tightness that comes from speaking all day, from swallowing emotions, from holding things back. Let it soften. Let your throat be open and relaxed. Breathing easy and unrestricted. Feel your shoulders. Notice if they are creeping upward toward your ears. They almost always are by the end of a day, without our noticing. With your next exhale, let them fall. Let them drop away from your ears and find the surface beneath you, the mattress, the pillow, whatever is holding you tonight. Feel the surface accept your weight. Let yourself be held. Your arms are heavy now, both of them. Your hands are heavy. Uncurl your fingers if they are still curled. Let your palms fall open, face up or face down, whichever feels more natural. Your hands have worked today. They have typed and touched and carried and gestured. Let them be still, simply still. Bring your attention to your chest. Your heart is beating, slow and steady and faithful. Your heart has been beating without your attention for every minute of every day of your entire life. It does not need your supervision tonight. It does not need your help. Let it beat slowly, steadily in the dark. Your belly rises and falls. Let it be soft. Let there be no holding in the belly tonight. Your hips are heavy. Your legs are heavy. Your feet are heavy. The weight of your entire body is supported completely by the surface beneath you. Every part of you is held. You do not have to hold yourself up. You never have to hold yourself up here. Let yourself be held. Breathe in, long and slow. Hold and out. You are doing beautifully. Right now, more than 2 kilometers beneath the surface of the ocean, beneath more water than a city is tall, the Earth's crust is splitting open along enormous fractures in the seafloor. And where those fractures open, seawater percolates down through the rock, reaches the superheated magma below, is transformed into something mineral-rich and scalding, and erupts back upward through cracks in the seafloor as columns of super-hot, dark fluid, black smokers. Towers of rock built by the crystallization of minerals as that fluid meets the cold ocean. Chimneys growing upward, millimeter by millimeter, in total darkness. And around them, against every expectation science ever held about where life could exist, entire ecosystems. Tube worms taller than a person with no mouth and no gut, fed by bacteria that live inside their own bodies. Eyeless shrimp that navigate by the faint infrared glow of the hottest vents. Crabs that pick their careful paths across mineral fields without ever having seen light. Worms that live on the walls of chimneys where the temperature reaches 80 degrees Celsius. Life that has never needed the sun. Life that found another way. Tonight, we are going there. We are going slowly, quietly, gently. You will feel nothing but the warmth and softness of wherever you are resting. You will hear only this voice. And we will descend together all the way to the bottom of the world, to the hydrothermal vents, to the black smokers, to the place that may have been the cradle of all life on Earth. Breathe in, hold, and out. Stay with me. We're going down. We begin at the surface, at 0 meters. The ocean stretches in every direction, flat, vast, impossibly blue, under a sky wide enough to feel like a different kind of ocean. The light here is generous and warm, catching the water's surface in long, shimmering ripples, the swells moving in easy rhythms beneath you, slow and patient and ancient. Close your eyes on the surface. Feel the sun on your face. Feel the water moving beneath your floating body. The rocking. The gentle, rhythmic rocking that the ocean gives to everything it holds. You breathe in the salt air, and then you let go. At 5 meters, the world above you becomes a ceiling of silver and gold. You look up and see the sunlight breaking through the surface in long, scattered columns, cathedral light, through the most perfect cathedral ever built, light that exists only where air and water meet, that has never touched anything except this surface and you. The warmth is still everywhere. The water is still clear. You can see your hands in front of you with perfect detail, every line, every shadow. The light bending around your fingers like it is glad to touch them. Everything is visible here, and visible feels safe. Let yourself feel that safety, because you will carry it with you as we go deeper. The safety of being held, the safety of the water supporting every part of you. That feeling does not diminish as we descend. It only deepens. At 10 meters, a school of fish curves around you in perfect formation, silver shapes moving as a single body, turning and wheeling in unison, each individual fish following only the fish closest to it. No leader, no coordinator, each one simply responding to its immediate neighbors. And from 10,000 acts of simple local following, something emerges that looks like collective intelligence, like shared purpose, like one vast organism making decisions. Scientists call this emergence, complex behavior arising from simple rules. The flock, the school, the colony. They emerge everywhere in nature because they work, because distributed response is often faster, more adaptable, more resilient than centralized command. Your immune system works this way. Your neural networks work this way. The cells of your body communicate locally, respond to their immediate neighbors, and from that simple, local, distributed activity, the extraordinarily complex experience of being you emerges. You don't have to manage any of it tonight. Just breathe. Breathe in and out. At 20 meters, the pressure has become noticeable for the first time. Not uncomfortable, simply present. 2 atmospheres. Twice the weight of the air above the sea surface. A gentle, even compression from every direction that says, quietly, the rules here are different. At 20 meters, recreational divers are still at ease. The visibility can be extraordinary. Coral formations extend in every direction, built by organisms so small they are invisible to the naked eye, yet collectively producing structures larger than some cities. The Great Barrier Reef, visible from orbit, is the work of coral polyps that are each smaller than your thumbnail, secreting calcium carbonate for centuries until the accumulation becomes geological. The most monumental things often happen through the smallest, most patient accumulations. One molecule at a time, one day at a time, one breath at a time. At 30 meters, the colors are being taken. Red disappears first, its long wavelength absorbed by the water above, captured and held there. If you held a red flower in front of you now, it would appear grey. Then orange goes, then yellow. One by one, the warm colours of the visible spectrum are claimed by the ocean, drawn back into the water column where they belong. What remains is blue, only blue. And the blue is something you have no adequate name for. Not the sky blue of a summer afternoon, not the turquoise of a warm lagoon. Something deeper, something with weight to it. A blue that feels like the colour of stillness, like the colour of the kind of quiet that exists when all the urgency has finally left. Let that blue fill your vision now, behind your closed eyes. Let it be the last colour. Let your mind simplify to this single, deep, patient blue, and let it be enough. Breathe in and out. At 40 meters, the coral ends. The seafloor below is bare sand and rock, a simplification of the world, a reduction to essentials. The noise of the reef, the constant motion and competition and colour of shallow life is behind you. And the quiet begins. A lone barracuda drifts at the edge of your vision, long and silver, barely moving, simply waiting. The barracuda has been the same basic shape for a very long time. The fossil record shows barracuda-like fish from more than 50 million years ago already occupying the same ecological niche they occupy today. The same long body, the same hinged jaw, the same strategy of stillness and speed. When you find the shape that works, you do not need to change it. At 50 meters, the surface is a distant memory. You can see it still, the faintest shimmer of silver far above, but the warmth is gone. The water here is cooler and darker, and still like a room that has been quiet all day, like the place just before sleep. A lanternfish passes at the edge of your vision, Myctophum, punctatum perhaps, or one of the hundreds of species that fill the mesopelagic with their small bodies and their faithful daily migrations. It pulses once with bioluminescent light, 2 tiny photophores on its flank flashing for just a fraction of a second, and then it is gone. The lanternfish is part of the largest migration on Earth. Every dusk, in oceans everywhere, hundreds of millions of lanternfish ascend from depths of 200 to 1,000 meters toward the surface to feed under the cover of darkness. And at every dawn, they descend again, a great daily rising and falling, an ascent and return that has been happening in the world's oceans for tens of millions of years, before there were cities, before there was writing, before there were humans. The lanternfish were making their daily migration. They carry carbon from the surface into the deep every day. As a consequence of simply being hungry and alive, the biological pump, one of the ocean's great climate regulators accomplished by creatures the size of your finger who have never had a thought about climate in their lives. Breathe in and out. At 100 meters, the light gives its final performance, a grey-blue shimmer, a suggestion of a memory of what light used to be, something that a human eye, without instrumentation, would struggle to call light at all. It is the last of it. Below this line, photosynthesis becomes impossible. The green world, the world of plants and algae, the world that captures the sun and feeds everything else, ends at 100 meters, and the dark world begins. Let me tell you about the sunlit zone, the zone you are leaving now. The epipelagic zone from the surface to 200 meters contains most of the biological productivity of the ocean. The phytoplankton here, microalgae, cyanobacteria, diatoms in their intricate glass houses are responsible for producing roughly half of all the oxygen on Earth. Every other breath you take was produced not by a tree, but by an organism too small to see, floating in the sunlit surface of the ocean. Take a breath right now, and remember that. Half of it came from the sea, breathe in. Half from the ocean, and out. At 150 meters, you are fully inside the mesopelagic zone, the twilight zone, the zone between light and dark, the threshold world. Here, the hatchetfish holds its position with a series of small economical fin adjustments, its enormous upward-pointing eyes scanning the faint light above for silhouettes. Its body is flat, barely 2 centimeters thick and silver-sided, reflecting the ambient blue light, so that from the side it nearly disappears. But look at its belly. A row of tiny bioluminescent organs, photophores, producing light calibrated precisely to match the intensity and color of the down-welling light from above. This is counter-illumination camouflage. The hatchetfish produces its own light on its underside to erase its own shadow, to prevent any predator below from seeing it silhouetted against the dim light above. It makes itself invisible from below by producing light. It makes itself invisible from the side by reflecting light. In the twilight zone, invisibility is the most important trait, and animals have found dozens of ways to achieve it. Transparency, red coloration that becomes invisible in red depleted light, mirror-like flanks, bioluminescent counter-illumination. The twilight zone is a masterclass in the art of not being seen. At 200 meters, the light is gone, true gone. Not the dark of your room with the curtains drawn where your eyes slowly find the shapes. Not the dark of a cloudy night where city light and starlight still filter through. This is a dark that has no variation, a dark that your eyes cannot navigate because there is nothing to navigate by, a dark that has been continuous in this place since the ocean first formed, and your body knows it. Something ancient in you responds, not with fear, but with something older than fear, something that says the dark is where we rest, the dark is where we heal, the dark is where the body goes when it is ready to stop performing and begin recovering. Your melatonin rises in the dark, your cortisol falls, your heart rate slows, your body temperature drops slightly, preparing for sleep the way the ocean prepares for the dark, by cooling, quieting, and settling into the deep rhythms that govern from below. Let the dark be permission. Permission to be exactly as still as you are now. Breathe in and out. At 250 meters, a dense cloud of something small and barely visible drifts around you in every direction. Copepods. Copepods are tiny crustaceans, relatives of shrimp and crabs, though most species are only a millimeter or two long, and they are, by any reasonable measure, the most numerous complex animals on Earth. Their total population may exceed 1 quintillion. 1 quintillion individual copepods in the ocean right now. That number is not a number you can really hold. A quintillion is a billion billions. If you counted 1 copepod per second, it would take you more than 30 million years to finish, and they are each complete. Each one has a nervous system, an eye, a heart, a reproductive system. Each one is born and grows and feeds and is eaten or dies of something else. Each one has its small, complete life, in numbers that exceed the stars in the observable universe. You drift through them like a planet drifting through a galaxy of invisible life. Breathe in and out. At 300 meters, you pass through the thermocline, the sharp boundary between the warm, mixed layer of the surface and the cold, deep water below. The transition happens over a few dozen meters, and the change is jarring in its decisiveness. From 15 degrees Celsius to 5 degrees. From the variable, season-influenced surface water to something that has been this temperature for a very long time. Below the thermocline, the ocean is extraordinarily stable. The temperature in the deep ocean varies by only a degree or two over centuries. During ice ages, when the surface of the ocean was colder, the deep adjusted slightly. During warm interglacials, it adjusted the other way, but these changes happen over thousands of years, slowly, so slowly that they are invisible on any human timescale. The deep ocean moves in geological time. Your anxieties move in seconds and minutes. Your worries move in days. Your problems feel urgent in the time scale of a human life. But below you, the water is as patient as stone, as unhurried as a mountain. It has been cold and dark and still for longer than anything you have ever worried about has existed. Let some of that patience into you tonight. Let the geological patience of the deep ocean seep into you through this quiet. Breathe in, hold, and out. At 350 meters, the pressure is 35 atmospheres. Every square centimeter of whatever exists at this depth bears the equivalent of 35 kilograms, pressing down on it from every direction simultaneously. The creatures here have found dozens of ways to survive this. Many deep-sea fish have no swim bladder, the gas-filled organ that surface fish use to control their buoyancy. A swim bladder full of gas at these pressures would compress to nothing. Instead, deep-sea fish often have either gelatinous bodies, mostly water, which is incompressible, or fatty, waxy tissues that remain functional at depth. Some deep-sea species have enzymes that are specially shaped to work under pressure, pressure that would distort and disable the enzymes of surface animals. They have cell membranes rich in unsaturated fatty acids that remain fluid and functional in cold and pressure, where a surface membrane would become rigid. Every part of their biology has been tuned by millions of years of selection to exactly this environment. This is not survival despite the pressure. It is survival because of the pressure, because the pressure shaped everything they are. At 400 meters, something large and translucent drifts across your path. A pyrosoma, Atlanticum. A colonial tunicate, a hollow cylinder composed of thousands of individual zooids, each one a filter feeder, drawing seawater through its body and expelling filtered water outward through a shared opening at the rear of the cylinder. The collective filtration drives the colony slowly through the water, leaving a trail of particle-free seawater behind it like a living jet engine. Pyrosomes can reach 7 meters in length. They are strongly bioluminescent. When disturbed, each zooid lights up, and the whole colony glows with a blue-green light visible across the darkness. Old sailors' accounts describe hauling these up in nets on dark nights and using them to read by. A 7-meter-long glowing animal colonial jet engine drifting through the midnight ocean. The deep sea is not a barren place. It is a place where life has found shapes that the surface world has never needed and cannot imagine. Breathe in and out. At 500 meters, the water around you has not touched the surface in decades. Some of it has not been at the surface since before you were born. Some of it has not touched sunlight since your grandparents were children. It sank somewhere, in the cold, high salinity waters of the North Atlantic, or the Southern Ocean near Antarctica, driven down by its own density, beginning a journey through the deep that would take it centuries to complete. This water has been moving slowly through the ocean's interior since it sank, following the topography of the seafloor, mixing infinitesimally slowly with the waters around it, carrying dissolved gases and nutrients from the surface to the deep and back. It is the ocean's long memory, its slow circulation. The global conveyor belt that connects every ocean to every other ocean, that carries heat from the tropics to the poles, that ventilates the deep with oxygen from the surface. The ocean is a single interconnected system. What happens in the Arctic affects what happens in the deep Pacific. What happens on the surface affects what happens at 2,000 meters. Everything is connected slowly through the movement of this patient, ancient water. You are moving through the ocean's memory. Breathe in and out. At 600 meters, the viperfish materializes from the dark, Chorleodus sloani, about 30 centimeters long. And within those 30 centimeters, one of the most lethal mouths in the ocean. Its teeth, transparent, needle-like, curved backward, so prey cannot escape once impaled, are so large that the fish cannot close its mouth. They extend outside the jaw like the fangs of something from a nightmare. But the nightmare belongs to smaller fish. To you, the viperfish is simply a marvel. When it strikes, its head rotates backward on a flexible joint, its jaw dropping nearly perpendicular to its spine, the mouth gaping impossibly wide. The strike is so fast that the pressure wave ahead of the movement can stun prey before the teeth even make contact. And from its first dorsal spine, a long filament extends into the water above, tipped with a photophore that pulses light in patterns that attract prey from the darkness. Light as lure, light as language, light as architecture of survival. The viperfish hunts with light in a world that has none. It makes what it needs from what it has. Breathe in, hold, and out. At 700 meters, something falls past you in every direction, silently, endlessly, slowly. Marine snow. The continuous, gentle rain of the dead that falls from the upper ocean into the deep. Dead phytoplankton, their glass frustules and limey tests beginning their long fall. Shed exoskeletons of copepods and amphipods, the fecal pellets of krill and fish. Aggregates of bacteria and particulate matter held together by strands of transparent polysaccharide gel called transparent exopolymers. Each particle is small. Most are invisible individually, but together, caught in the beam of a submersible's light, they drift and spin and settle with the unmistakable beauty of snowfall. Each particle is carrying carbon. Carbon, fixed by phytoplankton at the surface from carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Carbon that was once a gas, that was captured by the smallest organisms incorporated into bodies, eaten and re-eaten, excreted, and is now falling, slowly, down to the seafloor. This is the biological carbon pump, one of Earth's most important climate regulators. Every particle that reaches the seafloor and is buried in the sediment removes its carbon from the active carbon cycle, sequestering it in the deep for thousands to millions of years. The ocean has been doing this for hundreds of millions of years. Long before there were humans adding carbon to the atmosphere, the ocean has been taking carbon from the air, turning it into life, and sinking that life into the deep. You are breathing in the consequence of this system. Every breath of oxygen you take was produced at some point by an organism that eventually became marine snow. You are connected to this falling, silent snow more intimately than you might ever have realized. Watch it fall around you. Each particle unhurried, each particle already complete, each particle becoming the foundation for what grows next. Breathe in and out. At 800 meters, you descend through the deep scattering layer. A zone of biological density so high that early sonar operators in the 1940s thought their equipment was malfunctioning. The sonar signal was bouncing back from the layer of organisms rather than from the seafloor. They called it the false bottom. And then, as they probed it further, they discovered that it was not false. It was alive. Dense aggregations of fish, squid, shrimp, and other mesopelagic organisms concentrating at these depths during the day, using the darkness as protection from the surface predators above. At dusk, they ascend. At dawn, they descend. The whole scattering layer rising and falling in a daily rhythm, tied to the sun that none of them can see, from 800 meters. They know somehow, through subtle changes in pressure, through the chemical signatures of the descending light above, through some biological clock calibrated over millions of generations. They know when it is time to rise and when it is time to come back down. Your body knows this too. It has its own clocks, its own rhythms, its own knowledge of when to be alert and when to release into dark and rest. Right now, your body knows it is time. Breathe in and out. At 900 meters, the last traces of the deep scattering layer are behind you. You are alone in the water column now, or as alone as you can be in a world that contains billions of organisms per cubic meter of water, most of them bacteria, invisible, everywhere. The bacteria of the deep ocean are extraordinary things. They are the recyclers, the metabolic engines that break down organic matter, remineralize nutrients, and return to the chemistry of the ocean what the biology of the ocean has borrowed. Without them, the entire biological productivity of the surface ocean would eventually consume all available nutrients and grind to a halt. The bacteria are the reason the ocean can sustain life at all. They are invisible, ancient, everywhere, and essential. They are in you too. Your gut, your skin, your lungs, every surface you have ever touched has put bacteria on you and in you. You carry more bacterial cells in your body than you carry your own cells. The human body is not a single organism. It is a community, a collaboration, a collective whose members have been working together so long that the distinction between self and symbiont has become meaningless. You are already a community. You have always been. Breathe in, hold, and out. At 1,000 meters, you cross into the bathypelagic zone, the midnight zone. Below this line, there is no light. Not a photon has reached this depth from the sun in the entire 4 billion year history of the ocean. The darkness here is not the darkness of night. It is the darkness of forever. And yet, and this is the thing to hold, the thing to let settle, the midnight zone is one of the largest habitats on Earth. It extends from here to 4,000 meters, 3 kilometers of dark water occupying a volume larger than all of Earth's land surface combined, and it is filled with life. Not the conspicuous life of the coral reef, not the abundant life of the surface, but life that is quiet and patient and old and perfectly calibrated to its place. We have sent 12 people to stand on the surface of the moon. We have landed spacecraft on Mars and asteroids and comets. We have photographed the surfaces of planets in other solar systems. And the midnight zone of our own ocean remains, in large part, unexplored. More than 80% of the ocean floor has never been seen by human eyes. Below you, right now, there are things we have never seen, species we have never named, geological features we have no maps of, entire ecological communities that have been living and dying and evolving for millions of years without any witness. And tonight, you are here. Breathe in and out. At 1,100 meters, a sound. Not quite sound. Something felt more than heard. A pressure wave moving through the water. A click, then another. Click, click. Somewhere not far above you, a sperm whale is descending on its hunting dive. A male, perhaps, given the depth. Males dive deeper than females, chasing the giant squid into the midnight zone. The sperm whale can hold its breath for 90 minutes. It can dive to over 2,000 meters. Its head, which comprises a full third of its body length, contains the spermaceti organ, a vast reservoir of waxy spermaceti oil that may help focus the echolocation. Clicks the whale uses to hunt. Those clicks are the loudest sound produced by any animal on Earth, up to 230 decibels at the source. Loud enough, theoretically, to stun or kill prey at close range. Loud enough to travel hundreds of kilometers through the ocean. And the brain that processes the returning echoes, that constructs a three-dimensional image of the world from reflected sound alone, weighs more than 8 kilograms. The largest brain of any animal in the history of the Earth. Right now, this whale is painting the darkness in sound, constructing a picture of the world that no human eye could see, hunting in absolute dark using a sense that we can barely imagine. Click, click, click. The sound diminishes. The whale descends, still deeper. And you continue your own descent. At 1,200 meters, something enormous drifts across your path. Something so large and so transparent that at first you see through it, rather than at it. A siphonophore. A colonial organism, the category of being that evolution invented when it couldn't decide between one animal and many. A siphonophore is a chain of individual zooids, each one a specialized organism, each one born from the same fertilized egg, each one differentiated by gene expression into a specific role. Some are nectophores, swimming bells that contract and provide propulsion. Some are dactylozoids, the hunters armed with batteries of stinging nematocysts on long trailing tentacles. Some are gastrozoids, the digesters, processing captured prey and distributing nutrients to the whole. Some are gonozoids, the reproducers. The longest siphonophore ever recorded, Apolemia, stretched to nearly 50 meters. 50 meters of living organism, moving as one, hunting as one, in absolute darkness. And it is everywhere in the deep ocean. Multiple species, different sizes, all pursuing the same improbable colonial strategy. Not one, not many, something in between. Something that challenges the very definition of individuality. What is an individual? Where does one organism end and another begin? The siphonophore has no good answer. The human body, with its billions of bacteria, its mitochondria that were once independent organisms, its constant replacement of cells, is not entirely sure either. Breathe in and out. At 1,400 meters, the marine snow is thinner. Less and less of a surface production survives the long journey to these depths. The particles that remain are the most resistant, the most durable. They have run a gauntlet of hungry mouths and remineralizing bacteria through 1,000 meters of water, and what arrives here has survived everything. The creatures at these depths receive very little from above. They must be extraordinarily efficient with what they get. The gulper eel, Eurypharynx peleconoides, may be the most extreme expression of this efficiency. Its mouth is hinged at the front and can open to an angle greater than 90 degrees, its jaw disconnecting like a snake's to create an opening many times the diameter of its own body. Behind the mouth, a stomach that can expand to hold prey far larger than the eel itself. The gulper eel eats infrequently, but when opportunity arrives, it eats everything available. A strategy of patience and excess. Wait long enough, and when food finally comes, take all of it. There is a philosophy embedded in that, not gluttony. The gulper eel has no choice but to eat whenever it can, because it may not encounter prey again for weeks. But a reminder that abundance, when it comes after scarcity, should be received fully. That when rest is available, you should rest fully. That when the moment for something arrives, you should inhabit it completely. This moment, right now, is for rest. Receive it fully. Breathe in and out. At 1,600 meters, you are in the deep sound channel, the SOFAR layer, sound fixing and ranging, a zone where the speed of sound in the water reaches its minimum due to the competing effects of temperature and pressure. Sound waves entering this layer are bent back into it rather than escaping upward or downward, trapping them within the channel. A sound produced here can travel thousands of kilometers with only minimal energy loss. Before the 20th century, the ocean was a much quieter place. The noise of ship propellers, sonar pulses, seismic surveys, industrial activity, these have raised the ambient sound level of the ocean by orders of magnitude over the past 100 years. But before all of that, the SOFAR channel was an extraordinary acoustic environment. Blue whales call in the SOFAR frequency range below 30 Hz, below the threshold of human hearing. Their calls, produced in this channel, could travel across entire ocean basins. A blue whale singing near the Azores could be heard by a whale near the coasts of Canada. Before human noise disrupted this channel, the ocean may have been alive with a constant conversation spanning the width of oceans, a continent-spanning conversation in a frequency we cannot hear. Tonight, in your own quiet, try to feel what it might have been like. To know that somewhere across the dark water, thousands of kilometers away, another breathing creature was calling out, and to know, without any doubt, that you were heard, and that you were not alone. Breathe in, hold, and out. At 1,800 meters, something has changed. The water temperature, which has been drifting only fractionally above freezing for hundreds of meters, is warmer, not warm. Nothing here is warm in any ordinary sense, but measurably, scientifically warmer than it should be. A few tenths of a degree above what the models of the deep ocean predict. Something below you is generating heat. Not the diffuse, geological heat that seeps through the crust everywhere. This is more concentrated, more deliberate. The mineral signature of the water changes too subtly. Hydrogen sulfide, dissolved metals, a faint chemical signature that is as distinct as a scent, the smell of the deep earth brought to the surface of itself. Something is coming. At 1,900 meters, the water shimmers, a distortion, a visual ripple where vision should be impossible in this dark. The heat shimmer that appears at the boundary between radically different temperatures, the same phenomenon that makes air shimmer above hot asphalt on a summer day. You are looking at the boundary between two worlds, between the cold, stable, deep ocean and something much hotter and much more active, between the world of the ocean and the world of the Earth's interior, a frontier. And it is beautiful. At 2,000 meters, the seafloor materializes. First as a texture in the dark, a slightly denser dark, a suggestion of solidity. Then as something with detail, the fracture lines and fissures of basalt, the smooth curved surfaces of lava pillows formed where magma met cold seawater and chilled instantly into rounded forms. This rock is young, by geological standards barely formed. The mid-ocean ridge below you is a manufacturing facility for new ocean crust, new seafloor being born moment by moment, year by year, as the two tectonic plates on either side pull apart and magma wells up through the gap. The Atlantic Ocean is growing wider by about 2.5 centimeters per year. As you breathe, one breath in, one breath out, the Atlantic has grown by a fraction of a millimeter. Over the course of your sleep tonight, it will grow by the width of a few hair fibers. Over your lifetime, it will grow by about as much as you will grow in height. Nothing is fixed. Everything moves. Even the things that feel most permanent. Breathe in and out. At 2,100 meters, the warmth in the water is undeniable now. The chemical signature is stronger, hydrogen sulfide, a faint metallic edge that speaks of dissolved iron and copper and zinc. And ahead against the bare black basalt, there are structures, small at first, low, irregular mounds of orange and white and black mineral crust, then larger, meter-high chimneys, some of them topped with irregular flanges of mineral that caught the vent fluid and let it cool before spilling over. And then, tall, rising from the seafloor like something that was growing in the dark for years, waiting to be seen. A black smoker. The plume rises from its tip in a column of dark fluid, not black smoke exactly, but not water either. Something between. Something that moves with the density and the opacity of very dark smoke, but flows and billows with the properties of heated liquid. It rises and bends where the cold seawater catches it, spreading sideways into the dark, and where the hot fluid meets the cold ocean, in the microseconds of that contact, minerals crystallize. Iron sulfide, zinc sulfide, copper sulfide. In that instant, the dissolved minerals come out of solution and become solid, adding their fraction to the chimney wall. The chimney is building itself. Right now, breathe in and out. At 2,200 meters, you land on the sea floor, or rather, you stop descending. You hover at rest just above the basalt, and you look up at the black smoker rising above you, 12 meters. 12 meters of layered mineral built over years of continuous deposition. Its walls are rough and crusted, layer upon layer of crystals in orange and black and white and pale green. A geological record of the vent's history written in precipitation. The fluid erupting from its tip is 400 degrees Celsius. The seawater touching it is perhaps 2 degrees. The temperature differential is nearly 400 degrees over a distance of millimeters. On Earth's surface, this would be catastrophic. The water would flash to steam. The rock would shatter. Nothing could survive the thermal shock. But at this pressure, 200 atmospheres, the water cannot boil. The pressure keeps it liquid even at 400 degrees. And the chemistry of this impossible contact point, hot fluid meeting cold water in an instant of crystallization, builds the chimney upward, bit by bit, breath by breath, growing while the world sleeps, growing while everything above is unaware, building quietly from the chemistry of the deep. Breathe in and out. At 2,250 meters, you turn from the chimney and look at the community around it. And what you see takes a long moment to absorb. There are tube worms. Many of them, hundreds perhaps, growing in dense clusters at the base of the vent chimney and along the surrounding basalt. Their white tubes anchored to the rock, their crimson plumes extending into the warm current like some deep-sea flower garden, each plume swaying in the gentle flow of heated water, all of them together in the same slow rhythm. Riftia, Pachiptila, up to 2 meters long, living for possibly 170 years, with no mouth, no gut, no digestive system of any kind. Inside each worm, filling most of its body cavity, is the tryphosome, an organ that is essentially a living bioreactor. Billions of chemosynthetic bacteria cultivated and maintained by the worm, oxidizing the hydrogen sulfide, carried in the worm's specially adapted blood, using the energy released to fix carbon dioxide into organic compounds, sugars, and amino acids that feed the worm. The worm breathes the poison, carries it in its blood, a specialized hemoglobin that, unlike yours, is not inactivated by hydrogen sulfide, delivers it to the bacteria. The bacteria eat it and produce food. The worm eats the food the bacteria produce. Neither could survive without the other. And together, they thrive in a place where nothing should be able to thrive. Let your body rest in the knowledge of that. That the right partnerships make the impossible possible. That the most inhospitable environments become habitable when the right relationships develop. You have people like that too. Relationships that make the difficult livable. Connections that metabolize what would otherwise be poison. Rest in gratitude for them. Breathe in and out. At 2,300 meters, vent crabs pick their careful paths across the mineral fields. Bithagrea thermodron, pale and blind in the conventional sense, their eyes are reduced and largely non-functional in total darkness. But they are not navigating by sight. They are navigating by chemistry, tasting the water with specialized sensory organs on their antennae, following chemical gradients the way a person on a dark night might follow the smell of food. The concentration of hydrogen sulfide increases as you approach the vent. The crabs can sense this. The temperature of the water increases. They sense this too. through thermoreceptors. Their world is a map of chemical gradients and temperature signatures, as detailed and navigable as any map made from light. A different kind of seeing, a seeing through what cannot be seen. What would it be like to navigate by what you feel rather than what you see? To trust the senses that are not vision? You are doing something like that right now. In this dark, with your eyes closed, you are navigating by feeling, by the feeling of the breath, the weight of the body, the slow rhythm of rest. You are finding your way by feel, and you know where you are going. Breathe in and out. At 2,400 meters, a white smoker stands apart from the black smokers, its chemistry slightly different, its temperature lower, its plume the color of milk or chalk. White smokers form where the vent fluid is cooler, 100 to 300 degrees instead of 400, and where different minerals precipitate: barium sulfate, calcium carbonate, silica. The structures they build are lighter in color and often more delicate in form, flanged and flowery where the black smoker chimneys are massive and industrial. The most magnificent white smoker system ever discovered is the Lost City hydrothermal field, found on the mid-Atlantic ridge in 2000. Its towers of calcium carbonate reach up to 60 meters above the seafloor, taller than any black smoker chimney ever recorded. Some of the towers at Lost City have been continuously active for 30,000 years. 30,000 years of continuous activity. The Lost City was venting when the last ice age was at its maximum, when glaciers covered Scotland and most of Canada, when sea levels were 120 meters lower than today, when the first human beings were walking across what is now the Bering Strait from Siberia into North America. The Lost City was here then, and it is here now. Some things are very old, some things are much older than the things that trouble us. Breathe in, hold, and out. At 2,500 meters, the vent field is dense with life. Mussels, Bathymodiolus, coat the basalt in thick mats wherever the vent chemistry is right. Not the mussels of a tidal flat, exposed to waves and weather. These are animals that have adapted their entire metabolism to a life in the dark. Their gills house chemosynthetic bacteria, methane oxidizing in some species, sulfide oxidizing in others, providing their primary nutrition. Some vent mussel species host multiple types of bacteria simultaneously, both methane oxidizers and sulfide oxidizers, allowing them to shift their metabolism as the vent chemistry changes. When hydrogen sulfide is abundant, the sulfide oxidizers activate. When methane dominates, the methane oxidizers take over. Metabolic flexibility, the ability to use different energy sources as conditions change. This is what has made Bathymodiolus one of the most successful colonizers of hydrothermal vents and cold seeps worldwide. Not specialization. Not being the best at one thing, but flexibility. The ability to work with what is available, breathe in and out. At 2,600 meters, the shrimp, thousands of them, tens of thousands, covering the black smoker chimney walls so densely that the mineral surface beneath them is completely invisible beneath a carpet of pale, eyeless bodies, Rimicaris exoculata. Their Latin name means swimmer from Rimicaris, named for the vent field where they were first collected, and Eyeless exoculata, though that turns out to be not quite accurate. They have organs on their backs, broad, flat, cup-shaped structures lined with photoreceptive cells that can detect the extremely faint thermal radiation emitted by the hottest vents. Not light in the ordinary sense, not photons in the visible spectrum, but thermal infrared, the radiation emitted by anything above absolute zero, intensified by the vent's extreme heat. These organs are 1,000 times more sensitive than a human eye at detecting thermal radiation, and with them the shrimp navigate. They cluster at a distance from the vent that gives them access to the bacterial mats they graze on while staying outside the temperature zone that would cook them. The dance of distance, the balance of approach and caution, the art of getting close enough without getting too close. There is wisdom in that, not just for shrimp. Breathe in and out. At 2,700 meters, the Pompeii Worm moves across the chimney wall, Alvinella pompeiana, named for the city buried under volcanic heat. It lives on the wall of the active vent chimney, the surface of the chimney itself, where ambient temperatures may reach 80 degrees Celsius. It is the most heat-tolerant complex animal ever found on Earth. Its back is covered with long, filamentous bacteria, a coat of microorganisms that it cultivates deliberately, feeding them secretions from its own glands, which may provide some insulation from the extreme temperature or detoxify the vent chemicals before they can damage the worm. The Pompeii worm has a mutualistic relationship with its bacterial coat, just as the tube worm has its trophosome bacteria, just as the vent mussel has its gill bacteria. Every complex animal at the hydrothermal vent has found a way to partner with microorganisms, to extend its own capabilities through symbiosis. The vent ecosystem runs on partnership. It runs on the willingness of different kinds of life to do together what none of them could do alone. Breathe in, hold, and out. At 2,800 meters, you follow the octopus as it drifts low over the basalt. A deep-sea octopus, gelatinous, translucent, its arms trailing behind it, with barely a ripple. It moves with none of the vivid display of its shallow water cousins. No color changes, no dramatic patterns. There is no audience for those things here. And the energy they require is energy that cannot be spared. What remains, stripped of everything superfluous by the constraints of the deep, is intelligence. The octopus hunts by chemoreception, its suckers tasting the water for the chemical trail of vent crabs. It approaches slowly, from downwind of the current, so that its own chemical signature does not precede it. When it finds its prey, it waits, it plans. It positions itself and then moves with controlled, deliberate speed. The deep-sea octopus has the same neurons, the same neural architecture, the same fundamental cognitive capacity as its shallow water relatives. Evolution built the intelligence first, before the octopus came to the deep. And in the deep, that intelligence finds different applications, different problems, different solutions. Intelligence is portable. It can be applied anywhere. Breathe in and out. At 2,900 meters, in a crevice in the basalt at the edge of the vent field, you find her. The brooding octopus, curled tight around a clutch of eggs, each one translucent and pearl-sized, hanging from the rocky ceiling of the crevice in delicate clusters like tiny lanterns. She fans them with her arms, continuously, moving the water over and around each egg to oxygenate it. She has been doing this for months, perhaps for years. At these temperatures, octopus development is exquisitely slow. The longest brooding period ever recorded for any animal was documented by MBARI researchers who observed a female deep-sea octopus, Granulodone pacifica, brooding her eggs for 4.5 years on a seamount off the coast of California. For 4.5 years, she did not eat. She lost almost all her body mass. She grew pale and thin, but she did not leave. She was there at every visit over those 4.5 years, until one visit when she was gone and the hatched egg cases remained. Her eggs hatched. They were alive. She gave everything, and it worked. Breathe in, hold, and out. Let that rest with you for a moment, not as a lesson about sacrifice, simply as a fact about what is possible, what lives are capable of, what the deep ocean produces in the way of devotion and patience and quiet, extraordinary commitment. At 3,000 meters, you leave the edge of the vent field and drift into the open bathyal plain. The basalt stretches away in every direction, dark and bare and ancient. The vent chimneys are behind you now. You can feel their warmth fading, the chemical signature of the water diminishing as you move away. Here, in the plain, the sediment is deeper. Hundreds of meters of accumulated material laid down over tens of millions of years, foraminifera tests, diatom frustules, the fine clay particles that rain down from the continents, the sparse organic material that survived the long fall from the surface. You float above it. The sediment is soft as powder. If you touched it, your hand would sink in and leave a perfect impression that would remain for years in the still water of the deep. You leave no impression. You are simply here watching, breathing, present in this ancient place. Breathe in and out. The marine snow continues to fall. It has been falling for the entire time you have been here. It will be falling long after you have gone. Each particle its own small story, its own small contribution to the accumulation below. You drift here for a long time. There is no clock at the bottom of the world, no schedule, no alarm, no meeting to prepare for, no task to complete, just the still water, the falling snow, the faint warmth of the vents somewhere behind you, the occasional movement of something alive in the dark. This is most of the ocean, the deep, dark, cold, still, patient plain that covers most of the floor of the world. And it is extraordinarily peaceful. Breathe in and out. At 3,100 meters, a snailfish drifts past, Pseudoliparis, or perhaps a cousin, pale and gelatinous, its body more than 90% water, its internal chemistry adjusted by trimethylamine oxide to work in the pressure that would destroy any surface animal's proteins. The snailfish did not conquer the deep. It dissolved into it. It became part of it. Its body chemistry aligned so completely with its environment that the line between organism and ocean has become, in a chemical sense, almost abstract. There is a kind of surrender in that, not defeat, but alignment. The surrender of resistance in favor of perfect fit. You can do that tonight too. Not dissolve, not disappear, but align. Let your body align with the stillness around it. Let your chemistry align with the night. Let your nervous system find its fit with rest. Breathe in and out. At 3,200 meters, you rest on the sea floor itself. You allow yourself to settle into the sediment, or you imagine it, the way you might imagine lying down on the softest surface imaginable. The sediment would be cool and soft as talcum powder. It would receive your weight with no resistance at all. It would hold you perfectly, completely, without any effort on your part. Let the surface beneath you tonight be that sediment. Let it be the accumulated record of all life, offering itself as a place of rest. Let your body sink into it completely. Breathe in and out. You stay here for a long time. There is no hurry. There never was. The vents continue their work, somewhere in the dark behind you. The tube worms sway in the warm current. The brooding octopus tends her eggs. The marine snow falls silently, endlessly. From miles above, the crabs navigate the mineral fields. The bacteria do their essential ancient work. And you rest. In the deepest place you have ever been, in the quietest place on Earth. Your breathing is very slow now, very slow and very even, in and out. There is a question. It has been following scientists since 1977, when the research submersible Alvin descended to the Galapagos Rift at a depth of 2,500 meters, and its cameras showed the crew something they were completely unprepared for: life. Not a few organisms, not sparse bacterial growth, thriving, dense, diverse, organized communities of animals, tube worms, clams, crabs, fish, clustered around the superheated fluid pouring from cracks in the basalt. Life where life had no business being. And the question that followed: is it possible that this is where life on Earth began? Is it possible that the first chemistry that eventually became us, the first self-replicating molecules, the first protocells, the first organisms, that all of this happened not in Darwin's warm little pond under the sun, but here, in the dark, under pressure, fueled by the chemistry of the Earth's own interior? The honest answer is we do not know, but here is what we do know, and it is extraordinary. Life requires three things at its most fundamental level: energy, raw materials, and a place where the chemistry can happen. Hydrothermal vents provide all three continuously in quantities that dwarf almost any other environment on Earth. The energy is vast. The gradient between 400-degree vent fluid and 2-degree seawater represents an enormous thermodynamic potential, the kind of chemical gradient that can drive the synthesis of organic molecules from simple inorganic precursors. Every day, the hydrothermal vents of the mid-ocean ridges release an amount of thermal energy equivalent to the output of hundreds of nuclear power plants. The raw materials are present in every form that organic chemistry requires: hydrogen, carbon dioxide, ammonia, phosphate, sulfur compounds in many forms, the dissolved metals, iron, nickel, cobalt, that would eventually become the active centers of the first biological enzymes, and the physical environment. The porous walls of a vent chimney contain millions of tiny chambers, some only tens of nanometers across. These chambers do something crucial. They concentrate molecules. In the open ocean, the precursors of life are diluted to near homeopathic concentrations. In the chambers of a vent chimney, they are concentrated, brought together, given a chance to interact. And the mineral surfaces of those chambers, iron-sulfur minerals in particular, can catalyze the chemical reactions that produce amino acids, nucleotides, the building blocks of proteins, and nucleic acids. Some researchers believe that the original boundary of the first life was not a lipid bilayer, the phospholipid membrane of every cell alive today, but the mineral wall of a vent chamber itself. That the first life was chemistry happening in a cavity in a rock, using the rock as its outer boundary, that it learned to build its own membrane only later, when it needed to move. This is the alkaline hydrothermal vent hypothesis, proposed by geochemist Michael Russell and colleagues, and developed over decades by researchers at institutions around the world. It is not a fringe idea. It is published in the most respected journals. It is taken seriously by origin of life researchers as one of the two leading hypotheses, and it has a consequence that reaches beyond Earth. If life began at a hydrothermal vent, in darkness, under pressure, fueled by chemistry, then the conditions for the origin of life are not special. Hydrothermal systems exist wherever there is liquid water and geological activity, and the universe is full of liquid water. Europa, one of Jupiter's 4 large moons, has an ocean beneath its icy surface, kept liquid by tidal heating, possibly containing hydrothermal systems active on its seafloor. The Cassini spacecraft, in its final orbits of Saturn, detected hydrogen gas and organic molecules in the water plumes erupting from Enceladus, evidence of active hydrothermal chemistry in that moon's subsurface ocean. Titan, Ganymede, Pluto. The universe is full of ocean worlds, many of them with rocky seafloors and geological activity. If life begins wherever the conditions are right, the right chemistry, the right energy source, the right confined space, then life may be everywhere. We may not be alone. We may not even be unusual. And the answer, if it ever comes, may be found not by looking outward at the stars, but by looking inward, downward, into the ocean that covers most of our own world, into the vents that may have started everything. Let that sit with you as you drift here in the deep. The possibility that you are part of something that happens not once but many times, that the universe knows how to make life, that wherever the conditions are right, something like you eventually emerges. You are a local expression of a universal process. Breathe in, hold, and out. It is time to begin the long way back. Not because the deep is unwelcoming, not because the dark is too much, but because your body is ready, more than ready. The line between waking and sleep is already very thin. You may have crossed it more than once already. And that is exactly right. We begin to rise. At 3,000 meters, the seafloor falls away below you. The basalt and the sediment and the vent field and the tube worms and the octopus with her eggs, all of it receding slowly into the dark. The black smoker is behind you now, still billowing. You can feel its warmth one last time, and then it is gone. At 2,500 meters, and the pressure lessens by a fraction, while the cold is the same, the dark is the same, but you are rising. And your body feels it, and something in you releases that you did not know you were holding. Breathe in and out. At 2,000 meters, the seafloor is deep below you now. You are in the open water again, rising through the midnight zone. The dark is unchanged, but you are moving upward through it. No hurry, just rising. At 1,500 meters, the water is the same temperature, the same dark, but you are lighter. You are so much lighter. Whatever you carried into this descent, the weight of the day, the worry, the unfinished thing, the exhaustion that had a specific texture and a specific place in your chest, it is below you now, left at the bottom, left with the vents and the patient organisms and the ancient sediment. You are lighter. At 1,000 meters, the threshold, the edge of the midnight zone, you cross it. Breathe in and out. At 800 meters, still dark, still still. Your body is very heavy. Your breath is very slow. At 600 meters, above you, for the first time, the faintest intimation of light. Not light yet. Just the suggestion that light exists somewhere in the direction you are moving. The memory of daylight waiting above. At 500 meters, in, out. At 400 meters, the blue returns. Faint, deep, absolute blue. Color coming back into a world that had none. At 300 meters, the thermocline, the warmth reaching down from above. You feel it first as a memory and then as a fact. At 200 meters, the surface is visible now far above, a rippling silver ceiling, the boundary between your world and the world you came from. Breathe in and out. At 100 meters, lighter, warmer. The light grows. At 50 meters, the warmth is on your face. At 20 meters, breathe in, out. At 10 meters, the surface is just above you, and then you are back in your body, in your bed, in the warmth, in your room. This is where you are, and you are safe. Completely safe. You traveled 2 miles below the surface of the ocean and back, and you are completely safe. And you are warm, and your body is heavy and still against the surface that holds you. The world outside can wait. The world outside is doing exactly what it always does while you sleep, turning steadily on its axis. The stars moving across the sky in their ancient patterns, the ocean breathing in and out against every coastline on Earth. The hydrothermal vents in the deep dark below, building their chimneys one molecule at a time. The world does not need you to be awake in order to continue. It has been doing this for 4 billion years without your supervision. Let it. Your body is doing its own work now. Repairs begun. Proteins synthesized. Memories consolidated. The deep architecture of your biology attending to itself with quiet, faithful efficiency. You do not have to help. You do not have to manage it. You just have to rest. In, out. The black smokers are still billowing in the dark below. The tube worms are still swaying in their slow, red, patient rhythm. The octopus is still tending her eggs with 4 years of faithful, quiet devotion. The marine snow is still falling, silently, from the surface to the deep. And you are here, warm, still, held, breathing, in, out. Let your thoughts become marine snow, each one small and already complete, each one drifting slowly downward into the soft sediment of sleep, where nothing is lost, where everything becomes part of what builds tomorrow. In, out, you are safe, you are warm, you are held. In, out, sleep. If you have not already, sleep. In, out, sleep. The deep ocean will keep its secrets until morning. The mysteries will be there when you wake. The black smokers will billow and the chimneys will build and the shrimp will dance their careful dance around the heat. You have done enough. You have been enough. You are enough. In, out, sleep. In, out, sleep. Follow unseen ocean history for more deep ocean mysteries, new descents, new secrets, new worlds beneath the surface. But for now, just this. In, out, sleep. End of script. Let us stay with the tube worms for a while longer because what they do is one of the most extraordinary things in biology. When the concept of chemosynthesis was first articulated, when scientists first understood that some organisms could use chemical energy rather than light energy to build organic compounds from inorganic materials, it was considered a biological oddity, an edge case, something that happened in a few extreme environments and had little bearing on the broader story of life on Earth. That view has changed completely. We now understand that chemosynthesis is not an oddity. It is not a marginal strategy. Chemosynthesis may be one of the oldest metabolic pathways on Earth, and it is not only happening at hydrothermal vents. It is happening in cold seep ecosystems where methane-rich water percolates up through the seafloor along continental margins, in the water columns of deep basins where sulfide-rich bottom water meets oxygenated water above, in the sediments of the deep ocean everywhere, where bacteria in the sediment perform countless forms of chemical metabolism. Chemosynthesis may power more of the deep biosphere, the total mass of living organisms living in the rock and sediment of the Earth's crust, than photosynthesis powers on the surface. The deep biosphere. It was not known to science until the 1990s. But we now believe that living bacteria exist in the rock and sediment of the ocean floor and continental crust to depths of several kilometers below the seafloor. Not thriving, not reproducing quickly, dividing perhaps once every 1,000 years, but alive, metabolizing, present. The total mass of living organisms in the deep biosphere may approach the total mass of all living organisms on Earth's surface, a mirror world of life beneath the world of life, alive in the rock, in the dark, below the dark of the ocean, with no sun, with no light of any kind, living on the chemistry of the Earth itself. Breathe in and out. Think about what this means. The boundary of life on Earth is not the surface, not the waterline, not even the deep ocean floor. Life extends down through the ocean sediment into the basalt, kilometers into the crust. The planet is alive all the way down, much further down than any of us were taught. And we are only beginning to understand it. At 2,350 meters, you notice the chemical composition of the vent fluid has changed slightly as you've moved from one part of the vent field to another. This is not surprising to the scientists who study these environments. Every vent has its own chemical signature, determined by the specific rock types the fluid has moved through, the temperature at which it was heated, the residence time in the subsurface. Some vents are rich in hydrogen sulfide, some have high concentrations of methane, some produce fluids with high iron content. Others produce acidic, metal-rich fluids that would destroy most biology. And yet, wherever there is vent fluid, wherever there is chemical energy, life has found a way to organize itself. In some of the most acidic, metal-rich vent environments, places where even the hardiest known organisms struggle, scientists have found evidence of life. Extremophiles that survive conditions that would be lethal to most known biology. Every time we had defined the limits of life, something has lived beyond those limits. Every time we have said, here is where life ends, something has pushed us back. Perhaps the limits of life do not exist in the way we imagine. Perhaps life does not have hard limits. Perhaps it has only gradients of difficulty, and the history of evolution has been a long, patient exploration of what the chemistry of the universe will allow. And the answer keeps coming back, more than we thought. Always, more than we thought. Breathe in and out. At 2,450 meters, scale worms, polycate worms in the family Polynoidae, hunt between the worm tubes. They are flat and segmented, their backs covered with overlapping scales, elytra that may protect them from the chemicals in the vent environment. They eat bacteria, smaller worms, other soft-bodied organisms. Scale worms at hydrothermal vents are often bioluminescent. Their elytra can flash with light when disturbed. Why? In total darkness, bioluminescence on the scale worm's back serves no visual purpose for communication or camouflage. Scientists believe the bioluminescence may be a vestigial trait, one that evolved for a purpose in ancestors that lived in shallower, better-lit water, and that has been maintained by evolution at depth either because it costs little to produce or because it serves some still unknown function in the vent environment. Not everything that exists has a clear current purpose. Some things are carried forward from history, inherited from ancestors who needed them, maintained because their cost is low and the time for them to disappear has not yet arrived. You carry things like that too, behaviors, responses, habits, some useful, some vestigial. The body is always a palimpsest of history. Breathe in and out. At 2,550 meters, you watch a vent fish, Thermasis cerberus, the vent eelpout, hover near the edge of the tube worm community. It feeds on the worms and crustaceans of the vent community. It can tolerate the warm, sulfide-rich water near the vents, though it avoids the hottest zones. Vent fish are among the most recent colonizers of hydrothermal vent ecosystems. The invertebrates arrived first, the tube worms, the vent clams, the crabs and shrimp, because the vents provide chemical energy that does not require mobility to exploit. But fish, which are predators and consumers, followed the communities that formed. The vent ecosystem developed in layers. The chemosynthetic bacteria came first. Then the animals that ate the bacteria. Then the animals that ate those animals. The classic structure of a food web built bottom up, but with chemistry at the bottom instead of sunlight. An alternative architecture for a world. a world built on chemistry and darkness and the heat of the earth. And in that world, every organism has its role. Every organism is essential, from the bacteria in the sediment to the eelpout, hunting near the tube worm tubes. Breathe in, hold, and out. At 2,650 meters, you move to the edge of the active vent zone and find what scientists call a diffuse flow zone, a region where hot vent fluid seeps through cracks in the basalt and mixes with seawater in the rock before emerging at the seafloor surface. The fluid that emerges here is cooler, perhaps 20 or 30 degrees rather than 400, and more dilute. The chemical gradients are gentler, and the life here is different, more diverse in some ways. Organisms that cannot tolerate the extreme conditions near the active chimneys find the diffuse flow zone hospitable. Limpets graze on bacterial mats. Small crustaceans shelter in the crevices. Polychaete worms build tubes in the sediment. The diffuse flow zone is where the vent ecosystem shades into the deep sea floor community, where the extreme specialist gives way to the more generalist, where the sharp edges of the vent environment smooth into the quieter complexity of the deep sea plane. It is a border zone, an ecotone, and ecotones are almost always places of great biological diversity where two different ecosystems meet and the species of each can exploit the resources of both. The border is where the most interesting things happen. Breathe in and out. At 2,750 meters, you find a vent clam bed. Calyptogena magnifica, the giant vent clam, lies scattered across the basalt in clusters, its white shells the size of dinner plates. These clams live at the edges of the vent field, where low concentrations of hydrogen sulfide reach the bottom sediment. Like the tube worm in the vent mussel, Calyptogena houses chemosynthetic bacteria in its gills. But its strategy for delivering sulfide to the bacteria is different. The clam has a long red foot, rich in hemoglobin, that it extends into the sediment to absorb sulfide from below, then retracts to deliver it to the bacterial symbionts in its gills. One part of its body absorbs the raw material from below. Another part uses it to feed from within, the whole organism operating as an integrated chemical delivery system. The clam does not think about any of this. It simply does what it does efficiently, faithfully, for years, reaching into the poison below, extracting what it needs, nourishing what lives inside it. There are many things in your life that you do this way, reaching into difficulty, extracting what is useful, nourishing what matters, without drama, without philosophy, simply because that is how you are built. Breathe in and out. At 2,800 meters deeper in the vent field, a colony of stalked barnacles covers a surface of cooled lava. Neolopus, genus of deep-sea barnacles. Like their intertidal cousins on rocky coasts, these barnacles filter feed, but here the food comes not from passing water currents rich in phytoplankton, but from the bacterial-rich water flowing from the vent. The intertidal barnacle must endure the alternation of immersion and exposure, of heat and cold, of drying and wetting, of wave crash and still water, surviving extremes of variation. The deep-sea barnacle must endure only one thing: pressure and constancy. The constancy of the cold, the constancy of the dark, the constancy of the chemical composition of the water. Different challenges, different adaptations, the same basic body plan, inherited from some ancestral barnacle that lived in neither environment, shaped by selection into two such different forms. The barnacle knew how to be a barnacle, and each environment taught it what kind of barnacle to become. Breathe in, hold, and out. At 2,850 meters, you sit at the base of the largest chimney in the field. You look up at it, rising above you, the plume billowing from the tip, the orange and black mineral crust covering its walls, the shrimp moving in their dense, coordinated mass. You think about what it would mean to have discovered this, to be on a ship in 1977 sending a submersible down for what was supposed to be a geological survey of the Galapagos Rift, and to see on the video monitor something that no human eye had ever seen before. The expedition scientist Jack Corliss transmitting from the submersible to the ship above. Isn't the deep ocean supposed to be like a desert? Well, there's all these animals down here. And the marine biologist Cindy Van Dover, later describing the scene, clams the size of dinner plates, tube worms waving red plumes, crabs picking through the rubble, a community so rich and so unexpected that the scientific team was, for a moment, simply stunned. What is it like to discover something that changes how humanity understands life? To see something for the first time that no human eye has seen before? To have the framework of knowledge you've built your career on suddenly, gently, irrevocably shattered and rebuilt larger? They went down, expecting nothing. They found everything. And the world has not been the same since. Breathe in and out. At 2,950 meters, the vent field begins its slow transition toward the deep plain. The chimneys decrease in size and number. The life becomes more sparse, more widely distributed. The intense, specialized community of the active vents gives way to the quieter, more generalist community of the deep sea floor. But it does not disappear. The bacteria remain. In the sediment, in the water column, on every surface. The bacteria are everywhere and always, the invisible foundation of everything that lives above them. And in the sediment, where the vent influence reaches through the diffuse seepage of chemistry, organisms live in the mud that no one has yet named. Species that have never been collected, creatures that have never been seen. In the deep ocean sediment, every liter of mud may contain hundreds of species unknown to science. We have collected and described perhaps a few % of what lives there. The rest remains, waiting, unnamed, unknown, alive. The world is still larger than our knowledge of it. The world will always be larger than our knowledge of it. And that is not a cause for anxiety. It is a cause for wonder. Breathe in and out. At 3,050 meters, the seafloor becomes geological. Not just biology now, geology. The basalt here is older, its surface dusted with a thin rind of sediment enough to soften its features. In this stretch of the plain, there are no active vents, but there are the ghosts of old ones, collapsed chimneys, their towers fallen and broken, their mineral structures intact but cold and dead, mounds of white and orange mineral rubble where something once rose and billowed and was alive with chemistry, a vent, that was active a century ago or 1,000 years ago, when the heat source below shifted, when the plumbing of cracks changed, when the pressure reorganized itself in the crust, and on those cold, fallen chimneys, life still. Stalked crinoids, sea lilies, have colonized the mineral substrate, their feathery arms extended to filter passing organic particles from the water. Brittle stars drape themselves across the rubble. Sponges have encrusted the orange mineral walls. The dead vent has become a reef, a hard substrate in a world of soft sediment providing something to attach to. The biology of the old vent living on in the biology that moves in after the chemistry is gone. Nothing is wasted, not even the ruins. Breathe in and out. The crinoids move their arms in the slight current, reaching, filtering, reaching. They have been in the ocean for 500 million years. Every major extinction event, including the Permian extinction that wiped out more than 90% of all species on Earth, the crinoids survived. They lost diversity. They shrank, but they did not disappear. They are still here, on the ruins of a dead vent in the dark, filtering the water, making their quiet living. 500 million years of quiet living. Breathe in and out. At 3,150 meters, you encounter a seamount. Not a large one, just a volcanic rise, perhaps 200 meters above the surrounding plain, its flanks draped in sediment, its summit offering a slightly elevated view of the flat basin below. Seamounts are among the least studied features on the seafloor. There are perhaps 100,000 of them in the world's oceans, submarine volcanoes that never reach the surface, rising from the Abyssal Plain by hundreds or thousands of meters. They concentrate biodiversity by providing hard substrate, by altering the flow of deep currents, by creating local upwelling that brings nutrients to their slopes. Each seamount is an island, a discrete elevated habitat, isolated from others, promoting the evolution of endemic species. Species found nowhere else on Earth. We have surveyed perhaps a few hundred of the 100,000 seamounts in any detail. The rest remain unmapped, unstudied, unknown. On the slopes of the seamount below you, there are almost certainly species that no scientist has seen. Species living on this specific seamount adapted to its specific chemistry and topography and current regime that exist nowhere else on the planet. They will live and evolve and die without being named. And that is not a tragedy. The unwitnessed life of the deep ocean is not sad. It is simply the ordinary condition of most of the life on Earth. Life that lives for itself, not for the record. Life that does not need to be known in order to matter. You do not always need to be known in order to matter either. Breathe in and out. At 3,200 meters, you drift above a field of manganese nodules. The most alien landscape you have yet encountered in this descent. Scattered across the seafloor in every direction, like a field of potatoes, are rounded black nodules, each one between 1 centimeter and 20 centimeters in diameter, each one lying loose on the sediment surface. These are polymetallic nodules. They form over millions of years as metals dissolved in the seawater slowly precipitate onto a nucleus, a shark tooth, a piece of shell, a fragment of old basalt, layer by layer, growing at a rate of about 1 millimeter per million years. 1 millimeter per per million years. The nodules you are floating above may have been growing since before the dinosaurs existed. Some of the largest nodules on Earth began forming in the Cretaceous. Inside each one, manganese, iron, nickel, cobalt, copper, concentrations of rare metals that the world above, in its insistence on electricity and batteries and electronics, has begun to covet. There are plans, commercial plans, actively pursued by mining companies to send machines to the Abyssal Plain and scoop up these nodules. Thousands of square kilometers of seafloor ploughed and collected, the sediment disturbed and suspended in plumes that might drift for hundreds of kilometers. The ecological consequences of such mining are unknown. The biology of the nodule fields is largely unknown. The recovery time of disturbed deep-sea sediment communities, decades, centuries, millennia, is unknown. What is known is that once disturbed, the deep ocean sediment community recovers very slowly. An experiment conducted in the Pacific in the 1970s, a simulated nodule mining disturbance, showed that 50 years later the biological community had still not fully recovered. We do not know what we would lose, because we have not yet looked carefully enough to know what is there. Breathe in, hold, and out. This is not meant to disturb your rest. It is simply the truth of the world below you. A world that holds mysteries we have not yet asked the right questions about. A world that is under pressure, not only the pressure of the deep ocean, but the pressure of human wanting. And knowing it is there, knowing the mystery is real, is the beginning of caring about it. Let that knowing rest in you. At 3,250 meters, a rat-tail fish, Coryphaenoides armatus, hangs in the water column, nearly motionless. The rat-tail, or grenadier, is one of the most abundant fish in the deep ocean, and one of the least known. Its body is tapered from a large head and thick forward body to a long, thin tail that ends in a point. It swims slowly, using its large pectoral fins to maneuver in 3 dimensions with extraordinary precision. The rat tail is a scavenger, primarily, drawn by chemical senses to the smell of organic material falling from above. It can detect a food source from kilometers away. It can arrive at a whale fall within hours of the whale's descent to the seafloor. It is one of the fastest to arrive at any food source on the deep sea floor. It lives its whole life in waiting and arrival, in readiness, in the constant, patient alertness of a creature that cannot predict when the next meal will come, but knows it will come, and is always oriented toward it. There is a quality of attention in that, a quality of presence, of being alive to the possibility of what comes next, without insisting on knowing when. Breathe in and out. At 3,300 meters, you lie on the seafloor. Not literally, you rest here. In the imagination of this place, which is as real as imagination can be, you rest on the seafloor of the deep ocean, and the sediment is soft beneath you, and the water above you is dark and still, and the only sound is the sound of your own breathing, which is very slow now, very slow. The kind of slow that belongs to sleep. You are almost there. The descent has brought you to the edge of something. Not the edge of wakefulness, that is behind you, but the edge of the kind of rest that your body has been seeking all day. the rest that repairs and rebuilds and consolidates and renews, the deep rest. Not the surface of sleep, not the drowsiness, the half-awareness, the still-present thoughts, but the deep of sleep, the midnight zone of your own consciousness, where there are no thoughts, no images, no self-observation, just the body doing its ancient, faithful work. We are going there now. Breathe in and out. At 3,350 meters, the sediment here is extraordinarily fine. Red clay, the most common deep-sea sediment in the world. Unlike the siliceous or calcareous oozes that accumulate where surface productivity is high, the red clays accumulate in the most remote, deepest, least productive parts of the ocean. In these zones, the carbonate tests of foraminifera dissolve as they sink below the carbonate compensation depth, and the silica frustules of diatoms are remineralized in the water column. What remains is clay. The finest particles carried by wind and current from the continents, dust from the Sahara, ash from volcanic eruptions, the tiniest fragments of rock weathered by 1 billion years of exposure. Falling very slowly and accumulating at about 1 centimeter per 1,000 years. The sediment beneath you is millions of years old. Entire civilizations rose and fell in the time it took 1 centimeter of this sediment to accumulate. The deep ocean operates at a tempo so different from human life that human life becomes, in that context, something very small and very brief and very precious for exactly that smallness and brevity. A brief flame of awareness in a very large, very old, very patient dark. Let your flame rest tonight. Let it burn very low and very steady. Just the smallest flicker. Still alive. Still warm. Breathe in and out. At 3,400 meters, you encounter the last living thing of this descent. A single sea cucumber, Scotoplanes globosa, walking across the red clay on its tube feet, moving with extraordinary slowness, each step a commitment, each step taken without any awareness of being observed. The sea cucumber ingests sediment as it moves, taking the clay and the bacteria and the organic particles in through its mouth, extracting whatever nutrition is available, and expelling the processed sediment behind it. Sea cucumbers process enormous quantities of seafloor sediment. Some deep-sea species move so slowly that they take a week to travel 1 meter. And yet, in the aggregate, sea cucumbers are among the most important bioturbators of the deep sea floor, turning over the sediment, mixing it, aerating it, making it available for the next generation of bacteria and organic matter. A very slow creature doing essential work. The slowest pace doing important things. There is no pace that is too slow to matter. Let your breathing find whatever pace it needs to. In, out. At 3,450 meters, the last depth marker of this descent, you have come as far as we will go tonight. All around you, the still red clay, the dark water, the marine snow, still falling, still patient, still making its slow descent from the world above. Far behind you, the vent field, still billowing, still building, still alive with the chemistry of the Earth's interior. Far above you, the surface, where the sun is either setting or has already set, and the sky is full of stars over an ocean that seems, from up there, to be simple and flat and empty. But you know better now. You know what the ocean holds in its depth. You know about the black smokers and the tube worms and the Brooding Octopus and the Eyeless shrimp and the Pompeii Worm on its chimney wall. You know that life does not need the sun. You know that the deep ocean is not empty. And you know that this dark, the dark of the deep ocean, the dark that has held its secrets for 4 billion years, is not threatening. It is simply the world that most of the world is, and it is resting, always resting. Breathe in and out. We begin to rise. The year was 1977, and nobody expected to find anything. The scientists aboard the RV Knorr were geologists and geochemists primarily. Their mission was to survey the Galapagos Rift, a segment of the mid-ocean ridge system in the eastern Pacific Ocean, looking for evidence of hydrothermal activity predicted by the chemistry of the seawater above the rift. The chemistry suggested that hot fluid was venting somewhere below. But hot fluid and chemistry are not life. Nobody was expecting life. Nobody had any reason to expect life. The scientific consensus of 1977 was clear. The deep ocean was a vast biological desert, cold, dark, pressurized, and nearly devoid of food. What photosynthesis-dependent food chain could support rich communities at 2,500 meters depth? The answer, the consensus said, was none. The deep was a place of sparse, slow, sparse communities of organisms surviving on the thin rain of marine snow from above. Not thriving, surviving. And then the cameras on the ROV went down to the rift zone, and the scientists aboard the Knorr gathered around the monitor. And there were the clams, the tube worms, the crabs, dense, diverse, abundant, unexpected life, clustered around vents that poured hot fluid rich in hydrogen sulfide into the freezing water. The discovery, wrote Cindy Van Dover later, was so fundamentally surprising that it required a complete reconsideration of our understanding of the limits of life. A complete reconsideration. In science, those are rare words. Most science builds incrementally, each paper adding a brick to an existing wall. The discovery of a hydrothermal vent ecosystems was different. It didn't add a brick. It moved the wall. It said, the wall is not where we thought it was. The limits of life are not where we thought they were. The rules we thought we knew are incomplete. And the implications kept expanding. If life can survive at hydrothermal vents, in the dark, under crushing pressure, at extreme temperatures, using chemistry rather than light as an energy source, then the conditions for life are much less restrictive than we thought. Much less restrictive. Life needs energy and the right chemistry and a place where molecules can interact. That is all. And energy and chemistry exist everywhere in the universe. Hydrothermal systems are not unique to Earth. We know this now. The Galileo spacecraft in 1995 and 1997 detected a changing magnetic field around Europa that strongly suggested a liquid ocean beneath its frozen surface, an ocean kept liquid by tidal heating from Jupiter's gravitational pull, possibly with hydrothermal activity on its seafloor. And when the Cassini spacecraft flew through the plumes erupting from the south pole of Enceladus, Saturn's small icy moon, it detected hydrogen gas, organic molecules, silica particles, and other chemical signatures that point directly to active hydrothermal venting in that moon's subsurface ocean. Hydrothermal vents on Enceladus. right now. If life exists at hydrothermal vents on Enceladus, if the same process that produced the tube worm communities on the Galapagos Rift produced something, anything, in the dark ocean of this small Saturnian moon, then life is not rare. Life is a process that the universe knows how to do. And the universe is 4.5 times older than the Earth. It has had more than 4 times as long to do what it knows how to do. We may be surrounded, not by life that built technology and sent signals, we have not detected those, but by life that found its way in the dark around the heat, fed by chemistry, quietly and patiently, alive in the vast deep of some ocean we have not yet visited. Let that open something in you. Not anxiety, wonder. The wonder of being a creature that wonders, on a planet that produced life in the dark as well as in the light, orbiting a star that exists in a galaxy of 200 billion other stars, in a universe of 2 trillion other galaxies, a small flame, but aware, and aware of its own smallness, and choosing, in this particular moment, to rest. Breathe in, hold, and out. The ocean keeps its secrets, not jealously. It has no jealousy. The ocean has no knowledge of its own secrets. It simply is what it is in its entirety, all at once. The surface glitter and the abyssal silence are the same ocean. The tide pool and the black smoker are the same system. The whale and the copepod and the tube worm and the Pompeii worm and the brooding octopus are all expressions of the same chemistry, the same process, the same ancient tendency of matter to organize itself into complexity, into life, into awareness, into the awareness that is lying here, breathing slowly, on the edge of sleep, listening to a voice describe the deep places of the world. You are the ocean's awareness of itself, in a way. You are made of the same elements: carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur. The same elements that make the tube worm and the chemosynthetic bacteria and the manganese nodule and the red clay sediment. All of it, all of you, assembled from the same periodic table, just arranged differently, just arranged into something that can lie here and breathe and listen and wonder. What an arrangement! What an extraordinary arrangement! Breathe in and out. The vent field is still there, somewhere below you. The black smoker still billowing. The shrimp still dancing. The tube worms still swaying. The octopus still tending. And you are here, still, warm, held, breathing. The most ordinary miracle. Breathe in and out, in, out, in, out. The water above you is dark, miles of dark, miles of patient, ancient water holding everything in its depth, and you are in it, and you are safe, completely, entirely, absolutely safe. The darkness is not empty. You know that now. The darkness is full of what lives in it. The darkness is where most of the life on this planet actually lives, and you belong to it tonight, not forever, just tonight. Tonight, the dark is yours. In, out, in, out. Let your thoughts drift. Let them be what they need to be. Let them come and go without grabbing, without following. Let each thought be a particle of marine snow drifting down slowly toward the sediment of sleep. Down, down, in, out. You are almost there. You are so close. In, out. There is a record being kept far below you. In the sediment of the deep ocean floor, the history of the Earth is being written in layers. Every 100,000 years, the Earth's orbit shifts slightly around the Sun, changing the amount of solar energy reaching the surface, a cycle called Milankovitch cycles, after the Serbian mathematician who described them. These changes in insolation drive the ice ages, the advance and retreat of glaciers, the rise and fall of sea levels, the warming and cooling of the deep ocean. And all of it is recorded in the sediment. The chemical composition of the calcium carbonate shells of tiny foraminifera, the ratio of oxygen isotopes in those shells, changes with the temperature of the water in which those forams lived. By drilling into the sediment and extracting cores, long cylinders of compressed history reaching down through millions of years, scientists can read the temperature of the ocean at any point in history. They can read the ice ages, the warm interglacials, the mass extinction events, the asteroid impact 66 million years ago that ended the age of non-avian dinosaurs. There is a thin layer in the sediment worldwide of iridium-rich clay from the dust of that impact. The deep ocean sediment is the most complete archive of Earth's climate history we have. You are resting above the library of all time. Breathe in and out. Think about what it means to have a record, to have a continuous, faithful, physical archive of everything that happened. The ocean sediment doesn't interpret, it doesn't editorialize, it simply records, layer by layer, year by year, century by century. What would it mean for your own memories to be that faithful? For your archive of experience to be that complete? Perhaps the dream state is something like that. Not the interpreted, narrative memories of waking recall, but the raw imprint of experience, stored as chemical changes in neural architecture available to processing in the dark of sleep. The brain doing its own layering, its own sediment, its own record, while you rest. Breathe in and out. There is a phenomenon in the deep ocean called bioluminescent flashes. In the mesopelagic and bathypelagic zones, organisms produce bioluminescent light so frequently and in such numbers that sensitive detectors on deep-sea instruments register a constant background of very faint light, not the darkness that is total, but a darkness punctuated by the most fleeting, the most momentary, the most ephemeral lights. Single cells of dinoflagellate disturbed by a passing current flashing for a fraction of a second. A jellyfish, touched by something unseen producing a slow ring of luminescence around its bell. A siphonophore, half a mile long, pulsing with light from one end to the other in a slow wave. The deep ocean in total darkness is lit by life. Not with continuous light, not with a steady illumination of the sun, but with momentary individual biological sparks, each one brief, each one complete, each one contributing to the faint background glow that the darkness, apparently, was never able to entirely extinguish. You are something like that tonight, a momentary light in a very large dark, but real, and beautiful in your brevity, and contributing in some small way to the background glow that makes the darkness a little less complete for everything near you. Breathe in and out. You have been descending for a long time now. You have passed through the sunlit zone and the twilight zone and the midnight zone. You have visited the hydrothermal vent field and watched the black smokers billow and the tube worms sway and the shrimp dance at the edge of the heat. You have met the brooding octopus and the Pompeii worm and the vent eelpout and the giant vent clam. You have seen a world that almost no one has ever seen. You have rested in the quietest place on earth, and your body has used this time well. While your attention has been here in the deep, your body has been doing its own deep work. Your heart rate has slowed. Your breathing has deepened. Your muscles have released their last tension. Your nervous system has down-regulated, moving from the sympathetic activation of the day into the parasympathetic calm of rest. Your cells are doing their maintenance. Your brain is doing its consolidation. Your body is becoming, molecule by molecule, slightly more repaired than it was. This is what sleep does. This is why sleep exists. Not just the absence of waking, but the presence of something essential, a process of repair and renewal that is as necessary to your biology as eating or breathing. The deep ocean rests in its own way, not through sleep exactly, but through the slow, consistent, unhurried cycles of its chemistry. The vent builds and collapses and rebuilds. The sediment accumulates. The currents carry heat and nutrients around the planet. Everything cycling, everything renewing, everything slowly returning to where it began. You are doing the same. Every night, in the dark, you cycle. Every night, in the dark, you renew. Every night, you return slightly to where you began. And in the morning, you will rise, the way the marine snow rises. It doesn't, but imagine it, back toward the light, carrying with you whatever the deep has given you in the night. Clarity, energy, the quiet readiness that only real rest can produce. But that is morning. And this is not morning. This is the deepest part of the night. This is the black smoker hour, the tube worm hour, the patient, brooding, ancient, faithful dark, and your only task, your only simple, single task, is to breathe. In, out, sleep. If you have not already, sleep. The deep ocean is here. The vents are here. The darkness is kind. The darkness holds everything. In, out, sleep. Follow unseen ocean history for more descents into the world beneath, new mystery, new creatures, new secrets from the deep. But for now, for this moment, for this breath, in, out, sleep. End of full script portrait The Vampire Squid. Its name, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, translates from the Latin as vampire squid from hell. It is neither squid nor octopus. It occupies its own order, Vampiromorphida, a lineage so ancient and so distinct that it represents a kind of living fossil, a cephalopod line that diverged from the ancestors of modern octopuses and squids more than 300 million years ago. The vampire squid lives in the oxygen minimum zone, a layer in the ocean, typically between 500 and 1,000 meters, where dissolved oxygen is at its lowest concentration. Most fish and large invertebrates cannot survive in the oxygen minimum zone. The vampire squid has evolved to not only tolerate, but actively exploit it, using the low oxygen as a refuge from the larger, oxygen-dependent predators that would otherwise pursue it. Its blood contains a form of hemocyanin, the copper-based oxygen-carrying pigment of many invertebrates, with an exceptionally high oxygen affinity. It can extract oxygen from water that is nearly depleted. When threatened, the vampire squid does not produce ink like its shallow water relatives. It has no ink sac. Instead, it can produce a cloud of bioluminescent mucus, sticky, glowing particles that confuse and distract a predator while the vampire squid makes its escape. It feeds on marine snow. Using its long, filamentous arms to gather the drifting particles of organic matter, it constructs small packages of food, marine snowballs, bound in its own mucus, and eats them. The vampire squid feeds on the dead, on the slow fall of the surface world's production into the deep. And in doing so, it participates in the biological carbon pump, consuming particles that might otherwise reach the sediment and locking their carbon in its own body, to be recycled at whatever depth it eventually dies. An animal with a fearsome name living peacefully on snow. Breathe in and out. In the midnight zone, the anglerfish female, of which there are more than 200 species, hangs in the water, her bioluminescent lure dangling from a modified dorsal spine, pulsing with light patterns tuned to attract whatever prey is present in her specific environment. The light of the anglerfish lure is produced by symbiotic bacteria, bioluminescent bacteria housed in the tip of the lure, fed by the anglerfish, producing light in return. The anglerfish cannot produce the light itself. It cultivates the bacteria that can. But the deepest strangeness of the anglerfish is not the light, it is the male. The male anglerfish is much smaller than the female, in some species 200 times smaller. When a male encounters a female, he bites into her skin and releases an enzyme that fuses his body to hers. Their blood vessels merge. His internal organs, no longer needed independently, atrophy and disappear. Only his testes remain functional. He becomes part of her body, not a parasite, not consuming her resources without reciprocation, a functional part. He provides sperm. She provides everything else. A female anglerfish may carry multiple males fused to her body simultaneously. This arrangement, parasitic sexual symbiosis, is unique in the vertebrate world. It evolved because the deep ocean makes it extraordinarily difficult for males and females to find each other. In the sparsely populated midnight zone, the chance of a male and a female anglerfish meeting is slim. When it happens, neither can afford to lose the connection, and so the male makes himself permanent, breathe in and out. Portrait marine snow in detail. You have passed through the marine snow several times in this descent, but let us pause and look at it more carefully. A single marine snow particle begins its journey at the ocean surface. A diatom, a single-celled alga enclosed in a glass house of intricate silica. A frustule, that is, under a microscope, as beautiful and complex as any architectural structure ever built by humans, lives in the sunlit zone for perhaps a week or two, photosynthesizing, growing, dividing. And then it dies, or it is eaten by a copepod. The copepod digests most of it and excretes the rest in a small, dense, carbon-rich fecal pellet. The fecal pellet begins to sink. It is heavier than water. It falls. As it falls, bacteria colonize it, beginning to break it down. But if it sinks fast enough, and dense pellets can sink at speeds of up to 100 meters per day, it may survive the bacterial onslaught long enough to reach the deep. Along the way, it may encounter the net of a Siphonophore's tentacles or the mucus web of a giant lavacean, a tunicate that secretes an enormous mucus house, filtering particles from the water, then abandons the clogged house when it becomes too blocked. These discarded mucus houses, themselves large and particle-rich, also begin to sink. Particles aggregate. Bacteria aggregate on the particles. Other particles stick to the bacterial biofilm. The particles grow as they fall, building into the fluffy, snow-like aggregates that give marine snow its name. Each particle is a complex mixture of organic matter and bacteria and mineral grains and the shed body parts of 100 different organisms. Each particle is a tiny ecosystem, with its own microbial community breaking it down as it falls. And some fraction, perhaps 5%, perhaps 1% in the deep open ocean, makes it all the way to the seafloor, where it becomes food for the bacteria in the sediment, where it becomes the layer that will eventually be the geological record of today, where it becomes, in a few million years, the rock that future scientists might drill into to understand what the world was like in the year that you are sleeping tonight. Your sleep is happening during a moment that will, in geological time, be recorded in the sediment of the deep, in the layers that the ocean is patient enough to keep. Breathe in and out. Portrait. Bioluminescence in the midnight zone. Consider what it means to make light. In the midnight zone, light has not entered for 4 billion years. And yet the animals here are not simply passive in the dark. They make light, actively, chemically, deliberately, or at least through evolved processes as reliable as deliberation. Bioluminescence is the production of cold light through chemical reaction. Typically, a molecule called luciferin is oxidized in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase, producing light with almost no heat, far more efficient than any light-producing technology humans have developed. LEDs convert about 40% of their electricity to light. A bioluminescent organism converts close to 90% of the energy of its chemical reaction to light. In the midnight zone, bioluminescence has evolved independently more than 40 times in different animal lineages. 40 separate evolutionary discoveries of the same solution to the same problem. How to make light in the dark. This is called convergent evolution, and the repeated, independent arrival at the same solution by different evolutionary paths. It happens when the environment strongly selects for a particular trait, and when multiple genetic and developmental pathways can produce that trait. The fact that bioluminescence has evolved 40 times tells us something important. In the midnight zone, making light is so beneficial, so fundamentally useful, that virtually every lineage that has lived there long enough has found a way to do it. Light is worth inventing. In the dark, light is always worth inventing. Breathe in, hold, and out. The darkness of the midnight zone is not, therefore, featureless. It is alive with brief, bright flashes, bioluminescent conversations in a language we are only beginning to learn to read. Blue flashes, green pulses, red glows, the rarest, because red light travels least well in water and few organisms can see it, making red bioluminescence a kind of private channel, visible only to those with the very specialized photoreceptors needed to detect it. The deep ocean speaks in light that no surface eye has ever evolved to see, a language for an audience that does not include us. And perhaps that is the deepest of all the deep ocean's lessons, that the world is vast and full and alive and speaking constantly in languages we cannot hear, and that our part in it is small. And that small is enough, that to be a brief, bioluminescent flash in the great dark of the universe is enough, more than enough. Breathe in and out, in, out.